knows every shadow like a lover's name. Her steps a rhythm, a deadly game. Fingers chase the edge of time. She rewrites the world, one line at a time.
Chapter 5 Firewall of Ghosts. Chennai Military Communications Lab. 2:47 a.m. The air inside the lab's secure data bunker tasted metallic, filtered through too many layers of ventilation, recycled until it lost any memory of the humid Tamil Nadu night outside. Ananya's fingers flew across the keyboard, her eyes burning from hours of staring at encrypted streams. Vikram stood behind her, his wounded arm pressed against his side, jaw clenched against the pain. "There," she whispered, highlighting a section of corrupted satellite relay data, fragments embedded in the uplink stream, code that shouldn't exist. The screen flickered with anomalies, digital footprints hidden within India's defense satellite network, not mistakes. A lab's perimeter security system, a ping from the external sensors. Vikram moved to the surveillance feeds, his body tensing. Drones. 3 of them, military grade, hovering at the compound's edge. Ananya's blood turned cold. Raw surveillance. Has to be. They think we're dead, but they're checking anyway. Standard protocol for confirmed kills. Verify the target's elimination. She pulled up the drone's flight pattern on a separate monitor. The machines moved in precise geometric patterns, scanning with thermal imaging and electromagnetic sensors, looking for signs of life, looking for them. "How long before they detect us?" she asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't be good. The bunker shielded, but not perfectly. 10 minutes, maybe 15 if we're lucky. They weren't lucky. They never had been. Ananya initiated an emergency data dump, copying everything they'd discovered onto 3 separate encrypted drives. One for backup, one for the tribunal, one for insurance if everything else failed. The progress bar crawled across the screen. 60 seconds per gigabyte. They had maybe 200 gigabytes of evidence. "We need to move," Vikram said, checking his weapon. "There's an emergency exit through the maintenance tunnels. It lets out near the shore." 3 more minutes, Ananya said, watching the progress bar. "I'm not leaving this data behind." Vikram didn't argue. He moved to the door, listening for approaching footsteps. The screens around them continued to pulse with information. Satellite trajectories, encrypted communications, financial transactions linking the conspiracy to banks in Dubai, Hong Kong, and Zurich. Then the screen directly in front of Ananya flickered. Static washed across it, followed by a harsh burst of white noise that made her flinch. A face materialized through the interference. Arvind Menon. "Hello, Ananya," he said, his voice crackling through speakers that shouldn't have been connected to anything. "I've been waiting for you to find this." Vikram spun around, weapon raised, but there was no one to shoot. The transmission was coming from nowhere, a ghost signal riding the same compromised network they'd been investigating. "You're supposed to be dead," Ananya said, her voice steadier than she felt. Menon's smile was cold, clinical. "Dead, no, merely transcendent. I exist now in the spaces between systems, in the networks you thought were secure, in the code you believed was protected." He looked older than she remembered, or perhaps the poor video quality made him appear more haggard. Dark circles under his eyes, stubble on his usually clean-shaven jaw. But his eyes remained sharp, calculating. "Phase 1 was just a test," he continued. "A proof of concept. You stopped it, yes, prevented the immediate grid collapse. But you didn't understand what you were seeing. Phase 1 was never meant to succeed." "Then what was it?" Vikram demanded. "A demonstration, sir, our partners. Proof that we could breach India's defenses whenever we chose. Proof that the old systems, the ones built on trust and national loyalty, were obsolete." Ananya's fingers moved across the keyboard, trying to trace the signal's origin. But it bounced through so many relay points that tracking it was impossible. Menon had anticipated this conversation, prepared for it. "Phase 2 is different," Menon said, leaning closer to whatever camera he was using. "Phase 2 doesn't destroy, it stabilizes. It creates order from chaos, a new architecture of power, unbound by the petty concerns of nation-states." You're talking about digital totalitarianism, Ananya said. Central control of all communications, all data, all information. I'm talking about efficiency, about eliminating the corruption and incompetence that plague every government. RAW was compromised long before I joined it. The politicians who oversee us care more about power than security. The bureaucrats who fund us siphon money into their own pockets. The system is broken, Ananya. I'm simply building a better one. By selling out to foreign intelligence agencies? Vikram spat. Menon's expression didn't change. By creating a network that transcends borders. The Americans, the Chinese, the Russians, they all want the same thing. Control, information, power. I'm offering them a framework where they can have it without war. A digital détente. At the cost of India's sovereignty, Ananya said. Sovereignty is an illusion, a comforting story nations tell themselves. The real power has always belonged to those who control information. I'm simply making that explicit. The data dump completed. 3 drives, each containing evidence that could bring down the entire conspiracy. Ananya pocketed them quickly. You won't stop phase 2, Menon continued. It's already in motion. The satellite network is already compromised. In 72 hours, every military and civilian satellite in the Indian Ocean region will be under our control. Navigation systems will fail. Communications will go dark. And when the chaos reaches its peak, we'll restore order. Our order. You're insane, Vikram said. I'm practical. The world is changing faster than governments can adapt. Someone has to guide that change. It might as well be us. The screen flickered again, and Menon's face began to distort. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand. You were my best student, Ananya. You could have been part of this. But you chose loyalty to a broken system over loyalty to the future. I chose people over power, she said quietly. Then you've already lost. The transmission cut out, leaving only static. For a moment, neither of them moved. The implications of what Menon had revealed were staggering. 72 hours. 3 days to stop a conspiracy that had been years in the making. He wanted us to know, Vikram said. Why? Why tell us his plan? Ananya thought about that. Menon was brilliant, but he was also arrogant. He believed his system was unbeatable. Believed that even if they knew what was coming, they couldn't stop it. Because he thinks he's already won, she said. He's so convinced of his own superiority that he can't imagine us actually succeeding. Can we? Succeed? She didn't answer immediately. The evidence on the drives was damning, but evidence meant nothing if Phase 2 launched before they could expose it. They needed to get the data to the tribunal. Needed to convince someone in power to act. But first, they needed to survive the next 15 minutes. The drones are closing in, Vikram said, checking the surveillance feeds. If we're leaving, it has to be now. Ananya grabbed her laptop and the 3 encrypted drives. Everything they needed was now portable. Everything they'd discovered, all the proof of Menon's betrayal, compressed into devices small enough to fit in her pockets. It moved through the bunker's emergency exit, a narrow maintenance tunnel that smelled of rust and stale water. Vikram led the way, his weapon drawn, moving with the careful precision of someone who'd navigated hostile territory before. The tunnel seemed to stretch forever, lit only by dim emergency lights set into the ceiling every 20 meters. Their footsteps echoed off concrete walls, each sound amplified by the enclosed space. Behind them, distant alarms began to wail. The drones had detected the heat signatures from the bunker's ventilation system. RAW's security teams would be mobilizing. Faster, Vikram urged. They ran, their breaths coming hard, the tunnel's oppressive walls pressing in from all sides. Ananya's mind raced with everything they'd learned. The satellite network compromise, the offshore contractors, Menon's digital empire spanning multiple nations, and Phase 2 ticking down like a bomb. The tunnel ended at a rusted metal door that opened onto a rocky shore. The Bay of Bengal stretched before them, black water reflecting distant city lights. The air was thick with salt and humidity. A small boat waited, hidden among the rocks, another contingency prepared by whoever had helped them escape Delhi. Vikram pushed it into the water, and they climbed in, the vessel rocking precariously. He started the outboard motor on the 3rd pull. The engine coughed to life, loud in the quiet night. Where are we going? Ananya asked. South. There's a fishing village 40 kilometers down the coast. We can disappear there for a few hours, figure out our next move. The boat cut through dark waves, leaving the compound behind. Ananya looked back once, seeing the drone's lights circling like electronic vultures. They knew, Ra knew they were alive. The hunt had begun. 3 hours later, fishing village south of Chennai. They arrived at dawn, the sky bleeding orange and pink across the horizon. The fishing village was small, a collection of weather-beaten houses clustered around a narrow harbor. Boats bobbed in the water, their nets spread out to dry. Vikram paid a local fisherman for a room above his shop. The man asked no questions, simply pocketed the cash and pointed them to a narrow staircase. The room was bare, a single bed, a table, 2 chairs, but it had a window overlooking the harbor, giving them a view of anyone approaching. Ananya immediately set up her laptop, connecting it to a satellite uplink device she'd brought from the Chennai lab. The device would mask their location, bouncing their signal through multiple relays. We need to contact the tribunal, she said. Get them this data before Phase 2 launches. Vikram collapsed into one of the chairs, his face pale. The wound in his arm had reopened during their escape. Blood seeped through the bandage. You need medical attention, Ananya said. I need this to be over, he replied. But medical attention will work too. She found a first aid kit in the room's small bathroom. Basic supplies, but enough. As she cleaned and redressed his wound, her mind continued to work through their options. The tribunal could verify the data, but that would take time. Days, maybe weeks. They didn't have that. Phase 2 would launch in 72 hours. We need another approach, she said. Securing the bandage, someone who can act immediately, someone with the authority to shut down the satellite network if necessary. Everyone in Ra is either compromised or too terrified to act. The politicians won't move without absolute proof. We can't go public. Menon's people would bury us before the story even broke. Ananya thought of the faces she'd seen in the data. The officials who were part of the conspiracy. The ones who'd looked the other way. The cowards and the collaborators. But there were others. People she'd worked with, who were clean. Officers who'd resisted corruption. Analysts who still believed in the mission. There's one person, she said slowly. Colonel Prakash. He runs the Satellite Operations Division. Former Army, transferred to Ra 5 years ago. Menon tried to recruit him early on, but Prakash refused. You're sure he's clean? As sure as I can be. He's also one of the few people with direct access to the satellite control systems. If we can convince him, he could initiate an emergency shutdown. That would mean taking down the entire network, Vikram said. India's military would be blind for hours, maybe days. Better than letting Menon control it permanently. Vikram nodded slowly. How do we reach him? Carefully, through channels Menon doesn't control. It took 2 hours to establish a secure connection. Ananya used an old encryption protocol from her university days. Something predating Ra's current systems. Something Menon wouldn't be monitoring. Colonel Prakash's face appeared on the screen, his expression guarded. He was in his 50s, with short gray hair and the bearing of a career military officer. Dr. Ra, he said carefully, I heard you were dead. Reports of my death were premature, she replied. Colonel, I have evidence of a conspiracy within Ra. Evidence that implicates Arvind Menon and dozens of other high-ranking officials. His expression didn't change. That's a serious accusation. I have proof, financial records, communications logs, code fragments showing systematic compromise of the satellite network. I can send you everything. Why come to me? Because you're one of the few people I trust, and because you have access to the systems we need to protect. Prakash was silent for a long moment. Then, send me the data. I'll review it. But understand, if this is some kind of trap, if you're working for foreign intelligence, I'm not. I'm trying to save the country. She transmitted the files, watching the progress bar crawl across the screen. 10 minutes of compressed data, representing years of conspiracy. When the transfer completed, Prakash's expression had changed. The guardedness had been replaced by something else. Anger and fear. My God, he whispered. This is, if even half of this is true. It's all true. And there's more. Menon is planning something called Phase 2, a complete takeover of the satellite network. It launches in less than 72 hours. Prakash stood, moving off camera. She could hear him speaking to someone else, his voice urgent. When he returned, his face was set. I'm initiating a security review of all satellite systems. Classified priority. It will take 12 hours to complete, but if we find what you're describing, I can order an emergency shutdown. Menon will know you're looking, Ananya warned. He'll try to stop you. Let him try. I've been in this business too long to be intimidated by a traitor. The connection ended. Ananya sat back, exhausted. They'd done what they could. Now they had to wait. That evening, the call came as the sun was setting over the Bay of Bengal. Colonel Prakash, his face grim. We found it, he said without preamble. The infiltration is worse than you described. Every satellite we've examined has been compromised. The code is dormant now, but it's there, waiting to activate. Can you shut it down? Vikram asked, leaning into frame. I've ordered a full network suspension. Every military and civilian satellite is being taken offline for complete system purges. It's going to cause chaos. Navigation systems failing, communications breaking down, but it's the only way to be sure. Menon will know you've done this, Ananya said. I expect he already does. Security teams are being dispatched to arrest him and everyone else named in your files. But Ananya, he's gone, disappeared, along with several key conspirators. Of course he had. Menon was too smart to wait around for arrest. There's something else, Prakash continued. We found references to Phase 3 in the code fragments. Phase 2 wasn't the endgame. It was preparation for something larger. Ananya felt her blood turn cold. What kind of preparation? We don't know yet. The files are heavily encrypted, but it involves international coordination, multiple intelligence agencies, and something called Project Athena. The name sent chills down her spine. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, or an artificial intelligence. We need to find Menon, she said, before Phase 3 launches. Agreed, but that's a task for another day. Right now, you both need to come in. Formal statements, protection, recognition for what you've accomplished. Ananya looked at Vikram. Recognition, protection, a return to the system they'd fled. But the war wasn't over. Menon was still out there. Phase 3 was still coming. We'll come in, she said slowly. But not yet. There's more work to do. Prakash didn't argue. He simply nodded. Be careful. Menon's made you his enemy. He won't forget that. The screen went dark. That night, as Ananya tried to sleep in the cramped room above the fisherman's shop, her mind wouldn't quiet. She kept seeing Menon's face on the screen, kept hearing his words, "You've already lost." But they hadn't. They'd stopped Phase 2, saved the satellite network, exposed the conspiracy. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like the opening move in a much longer game. Through the window, she could see the harbor, the fishing boats rocking gently in the dark water, the stars above, indifferent to human struggles. Somewhere out there, Menon was planning his next move. Somewhere, the machinery of Phase 3 was already turning. And somewhere, in the code, in the algorithms and protocols that governed the digital world, something called Athena was waiting to wake up. Ananya closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. The real war was just beginning.
Her eyes burn cold, her touch ignites. She's the heart